privileged. I mean, let's face it, that's what we are. That's what I am here. And I think this privilege is very, well, I hope it's very hard to deal with for a lot of people. I mean, I personally find it very hard to deal with.
At the start of each new year, the porters at Queen's College have 150 new faces to memorise. Many of the newcomers are leaving home for the first time. So to the pressures of work and the pursuit of pleasure will be added a third dimension: learning to live in a close-knit community that's taken 500 years to evolve. To ease their passage into adulthood, each fresher has been allotted a second-year student who, for £2.50 out-of-pocket expenses, will act as guide, mentor and shoulder to cry on. The contact scheme is run by senior tutor Dr. John Green.
You're just embarking on what is going to be I'm sure you're going to think it's a pain and a bore, and you'd much rather be going down the pub with your mates, your second years, to find out what happened in India this summer. But really, it's very interesting. And it really is going to be tough work for you, and but I mean, it is worth it. I'm very anxious that the whole contact scheme isn't seen to be an alcoholic euphoria. You may have ideas that it's going to be for you lot. The year before last, we had some wretched second years pouring brandy down these first years at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's all jolly nice, but I mean, for some of these people, it really is the first time that they've left home and spent a night away from home, and it's, for a lot of them, the first time they've actually been confronted with so much booze around and so on and so forth. And you must, I think, throughout your role, realise that what we're talking about is, as a scheme, is the whole scheme is set up not for the 95% who are going to survive and cope easily, but the whole scheme is set up to try and help the very few, and it might really only be 4 or 5, who are going to have problems. You should always be thinking throughout the next few days that the person to whom we're giving up all this time and attention is the person who's standing on his own in a corner somewhere and finds it very difficult to communicate. And okay, it's going to be difficult for you to communicate with him, but you've actually got to try. And that's what it's about.
Queen's is a popular and friendly college that's done much to evangelise in schools and sixth forms up and down the land. High on the list of creature comforts is that it can house its 420 undergraduates in college for the whole of their time at Cambridge, instead of dumping them in digs after their first or second year. Parents or ratepayers must find £1,800 a year for board and lodging here. The state pays the tuition fees. Queen's most illustrious resident was the Dutch polymath Erasmus. This was his headquarters for 4 years as he prepared his famous edition of the New Testament. But perhaps Queen's College is most famous for its apostrophe, for its origins go back to the 15th century and the patronage of 2 queens, Margaret of Anjou and Queen Elizabeth, wife of Edward IV. The college buildings embrace red brick, plate glass and Wars of the Roses half timbering. Into their new quarters, the freshers disperse. Each has at least a bedsit with a sink, desk and electric kettle. There are laundry rooms and loos in the corridors, and domestics called bedders to do the cleaning and tidying and to make the bed. There are 3 subsidised meals a day paid for in cash, but this dinner is on Queen's as it's the freshers' very first meal here. Contacts get the free meal too, but they're expected to sing for their supper by answering questions and spelling out the do's and don'ts of college life.
Standard 26 charging, 26 I don't know, just to round off your fees to a reasonable number.
And then my last term.
Conversation on this, the first evening in college, is animated, often rarefied. Berg and Hindemith over the fillet of pork masala.
Mind you, the piece you did at the prom is called Arioso, which is a superb piece. There's a violin and soprano. Soprano dude is a concertante instrument. Lights out. Right there. Close-up on the wedding party. Here's my head.
To round off the day, exposure to a Cambridge ritual, the drinks party. Going on simultaneously, there are 8, hosted by Queen's 8 tutors, whose job it is to keep a fatherly eye on each student.
It's very difficult to remember all these people. I can't remember whether I interviewed you or not, but since you were reviewed... Hello, Brian. Hello, Margaret. Come in. Since you lot... So you're not in it, guys? Sorry, that's all right. I think you're coming. The only time we'll ever... I can't remember. Now, what about having some coffee?
Each tutor has been allocated a batch of students. He'll see them at the start and end of term or as required. If anything's going wrong non-academically, it's the tutor's job to put it right.
Half hours to get to Cambridge, and then it took us another half hour to get from the outskirts up to Silver Street.
Cambridge is amazing on a day like this. Not only is it solid in traffic, but if you go into the shops, you can't buy any electric kettle.
This is the senior tutor's party. He's a mathematician, but he tends to be tutor for medics.
What's an electric kettle with us and then bring people now?
It's very funny. I enjoy watching all these parents sort of settling everyone in. I'm sure there's more lonely parents tonight.
£43 I bid. 44.
No student may keep a car without special permission. So the contacts recommend a visit to the quarterly auction at the police pound.
It's holding at £48 here. At £48 I bid. Finish then at £48. Yours, sir. Number 3 now, another rally, 20 unisex. £30 again.
Bidding is brisk and prices are high. The wheelless bike makes £12.
Right, 32. Yes. Now, coming in at 33. At 33, the lady here. 34 now. 34, 35. Are you coming in 35? Hold it up then. 35, 36.
600 bicycles a year exchange hands in this way. Lost, stolen or strayed, many have been dredged from the bottom of the River Cam, dumped in a watery grave after a night of revelling on the backs.
20. 20 anyway.
Right, you're British, is that right? Yeah, right, okay. Quite straightforward then. Not boring, but just straightforward. How about that? I give you one of these leaflets on birth control, and which I give to everyone, and that's not, as it were, an incentive to go and... Well, it's a hint, but it's not an incentive to go and do whatever you want to do, or do what you don't want to do. What it is, really, is to make you aware that student population is, in fact, much less clued up than a similar population age group in the country as a whole. And students do get into problems, and it's totally unnecessary. How you run your life is absolutely your own business. I've said there are lots of people around to help you, but there's some facts. There's contraceptive machines in college. No pressure in any direction. My job, as you've got their hang, is to make everyone aware, right? Okay. I wonder if you've gathered how the kitchen fixed charge system works. Right. You pay for your meals in two kinds of ways. There's something which is a kitchen fixed charge, which is about £50 a term.
The range of activities at Cambridge is almost limitless. And it's at Freshers' Fair that societies peddle their wares and deploy their salesmen to get freshers to sign on the dotted line.
We have a strong base in college because that makes it easier for us to organise production.
Mainly just to get multiplayer games, also finding opponents for...
We're selling tickets here. There are 3 places for the turn. Yes, it's a train. That's what we do.
Few human activities go unmarked here. There's even a club called the Very Nice Society. Prince Edward is a member.
There he goes. Dear Mr. President, he came from John's. Not along.
John Edward Lee have been college photographers for 2 generations. At the start of a new academic year, John Lee dashes between the 8 colleges that have commissioned him as official photographer. 85% of the freshers are expected to purchase the photo he's about to take, an order of something over 100 photographs at £8.50 each. For the college photograph, the freshers dress up. The gowns are adapted from a medieval livery and aren't worn much these days. They're obligatory only at matriculation, formal dinner in hall, and for the college photograph.
I thought I went went to Josh. No, I didn't.
Perhaps
I went
I
to
didn't.
W&G Taylor's 1450. Is that a college tie?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought I recognised the little crest on it. Where have I seen that?
On the ties.
Yeah, not on the... I'm used to having my mother there to cook and clean and do the washing. I've got a pile of washing in the bottom of that cupboard. And I keep meaning to get around to it, and somehow something always crops up or I forget it. And I keep thinking, I've got to do that, and it isn't done. And if I was at home, it would be done.
I did wonder whether I would fit in, not sort of coming from a totally upper class area and not from a private school, but I haven't found that that is the case. It's all been absolutely, you know, everyone wanting to meet everyone else and things, and not being the upper class thing. And I thought it would have been, actually, but it isn't. I mean, I've fitted in, and I don't think I'm upper class, so that speaks for itself.
Some people get embarrassed about wearing them. I don't mind it. It reminds me of my old headmaster at school. He used to wander around sort of out like this, and gives me a feeling of, I don't know, yes, there's something. Yeah, I just wish I had the sort of the belly.
Not that bad, really. Just wouldn't fancy walking through the town with everyone staring at you walking down the street with these things.
I don't think they would.
We fill the front bench first and then we move back. After Mohammed. Yes. Alexa Goru. Ashman. Ashwood. Yes. Bates.
Yes.
Baxter.
Yes.
Bell.
Yes.
Bentley.
Yes.
Berman.
Yes.
Bhattacharya. Blakeman. Bland. Booth.
Yes.
Bowater. Boylan. When the moment comes, if you would just sort of put your knees together and go slightly sideways, so that you're a nice, neat row.
We have a problem with your knees, ladies and gentlemen, in the front row. Could you? I think it would look a lot neater if you can keep your knees and heels tight together with your hands on your knees. Finally, gentlemen particularly, can you make sure your collars are within your jackets, just so that you're neatly dressed? Right, still now, straighten your backs. That's it. Hold it there. Heads held high. All right, looking this way, and cheerful, please. Here we go. That's it. Right, last one. Hold it. That's it for me. Thank you very much.
Although women have been coming to Queen's since 1980, they're still heavily outnumbered by men. In this intake, there are 94 men and only 39 women. The sexes are not segregated here. They're scattered evenly through the college, for a female herder would be too tempting a bait for boisterous rugger players on the rampage.
I think I fear most that I'm not going to get to feel properly part of the college. I still don't feel totally as though I belong here. I still feel a bit lost and as though I'm in a funny place where I'm just sort of sitting for 2 months before I go home again. I think that's the disadvantage of the very short terms, is that you're constantly feeling, good grief, I'm going to have to pack all this lot back up again in 6 weeks and go home. I think having started the lectures, it will be better, so you will integrate better. But that is the thing I fear most, I think, is that over the next 3 years I'm just going to sit here thinking, good grief, when are they going to let me out?
I've never been away from home on my own before, because we spent so much money sending me to school, we didn't have any left to send me on holidays and things. So I've never been away from home on my own, and I've never had to look after myself, I've never had to handle money myself. And but I seem to be meeting a lot of people who've been a lot more independent than I have. You know, they've been off travelling around Europe and all this business.
It's difficult to sum up my reactions because everyone seems to have so many and nobody's quite sure. I mean, you're caught between liking bits of it and hating all of it, and there's so much. Well, perhaps certain things have been a bit more over the top than even the myth suggested.
On the principle that a full stomach might make their message more palatable, the University Christian Union has hired the Old Hall at Queen's for a freshers' lunch.
actually show something that's against their theory. They'll only show what they want.
In this spectacular pre-Raphaelite reconstruction, the souls of the first year are torn between things temporal and things spiritual.
You can't really have that. You should say that, but again, one looks at, say, and for instance, I mean, what John mentioned, which is perhaps the greatest piece of evidence, the evidence for the resurrection.
Here, doubt meets certainty. Here, the true believer's faith is challenged by some awkward clinical facts of life and
But
death.
now they're saying, the scientists are saying, he wasn't actually killed. From the shroud and things like that, they believe that he was only unconscious, he wasn't actually dead. And so he could have got up, and if he'd found someone who nursed him and gave him the right medicines, and just a matter of pure luck, he came alive, back alive, and or at least he was dead in those days, but he wouldn't have been clinically dead now. And that's how he survived and came back.
Unfortunately, I mean, that's a theory that people put, but again, if one actually looks at
Welcome to Queen's, as no doubt many people have said to you already. Welcome to the Old Hall. Of course, coming to Queen's, you join the ranks of many notable men and women who've studied here. I suppose there have been quite a few pretty insignificant ones as well, but there have been some notable ones. One of the more famous, of course, was Erasmus, and you may know his famous complaint about Cambridge and about Queen's in particular, that the weather was unbearable and the students were unteachable, and worst of all, the beer is undrinkable. I hope you don't have quite such a miserable experience in your 3 years here. Just a few words then about what the CU is about and what we're doing. If you're a Christian, then this is a chance to nail your colours to the mast, join with other Christians here in Queen's and indeed throughout the university. This is a fantastic opportunity to grow in your faith, to understand more about it, to join in the Bible study group. So don't miss that incredible opportunity. And if you're not a Christian, or you're not sure what you are, you may call yourself an atheist or agnostic or whatever, then don't let others bury your head in the sand just because some of your friends are cynical or whatever. Join up with a discussion group, with a group of friends, that is, who are prepared to talk and think openly and honestly about what the big questions in life are. And you may find that there's a lot more to this Christianity thing than you first realised. I'll leave it there.
At school, I started out as an evangelical Christian, then started doing philosophy, and there's one big question about the God of love and evil. You know, how can this wonderful, all-loving, all-powerful God allow such evil in the world? And I remember sitting in the lessons saying to the teacher, well, of course it's right. God says it's right. The Bible says it's right. It's got to be right. And then going home and thinking, but it's not right. It's terrible. And gradually I just sort of lost all the Christian ideals, and I'm an existentialist now, so.
The secret of life here is to enjoy the best of all worlds. But to get the balance right is an elusive and subtle art. Some of the new intake will be workaholic. Others will be work-shy, wasting too much time at sport, acting, punting, and talking in cosy old-world studies. But at least in the melee of these first days, one thing is clear, that the main purpose of being here is to get that degree.
You start dissecting quite soon, actually, just to check that you don't have any whims about dead bodies or anything. It is a bit macabre.
At a meeting of medical students, the second year is briefing the first.
Try and check it every make sure that virtually all the bones are there. Well, make sure that every bone is there, in fact. Because if you haven't got some of the bones and you've got a Bible the following day and you haven't done your bones, which you should have done, then look through, make sure it's all there well beforehand, so that you can take it back and say, look, there's something wrong with this skeleton. And they'll check it.
As well for dissection. And it's first, you really need 2 white coats, one for biochemistry experiments and another which is really smelly, because you use that for dissection.
You've got to know your bones. It's well worthwhile. Just, if you're starting on this, the pectoral region, you start off with the bones. Then have a look at the muscles which are over the bones and attached to the bones, and then the blood supply, the nerve supply.
We have to get a skeleton. We're all advised to. They're about £70 and they're second-hand, of course. The skeleton itself is only what they call a half skeleton. You have the pelvis, the spinal column, a few ribs, the neck, the head, and 1 leg and 1 arm. So they remove an arm and a leg. Where the bones go, we don't know. We presume they go for first aid and things like that. In the first term, we do the arm. The bodies themselves, you cannot tell they are bodies, apparently. They're all wrapped up and they swell up. The bodies, the faces swell up and the hair's shaven, although there's just a bit of stubble that's grown after they're dead. And apparently the bodies we do dissect are about a year old. And you dissect a part each week, or however often you have the dissections, and then they put it away for you for next time, and you come back and you do the same one for however long it takes before it goes mouldy. So it should be quite good.
Are you worried?
No, I'm not worried. I'm looking forward to it, really. I mean, there's a natural little bit of niggling at the bottom of the stomach, wondering whether you're going to pass out or what it's going to be like, because you've never actually witnessed it, but it doesn't worry me. I'm quite looking forward to it. I'd like to become a surgeon, I think.
Now, the bodies that we dissect in the dissecting room are bequests. They are left to us by their owners, and they are given to us for the purpose of medical research. Under the Anatomy Act, they must be buried within 2 years. Please, I would ask you to respect the wishes of the donors and the material which you are privileged to handle. And I would ask you in particular in the dissecting room just 1 or 2 things. First, always please wear a decent white coat. Please do not smoke. Please do not eat in the dissecting room. And finally, please do not introduce visitors unless they are bona fide medical students. Now, that is all I want to say now, except to say that I all hope very much that you will enjoy your own original investigation into the structure of the human body. I will now ask Sir John Butterfield to widen the subject somewhat.
Thank you. Edward, thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's my happy responsibility to welcome you, as it were, into the medical profession. In doing that, I want to make certain points, very deep and important points, but really very simple points to you. I want to welcome you, and I want you from today to realize you have become, for the rest of your life, I hope, students of medicine. We're all students of medicine. Edward and I are still studying medicine, grey-haired though I may be, and grey-haired though he may be. You will become students of medicine forever, or for the rest of your lives, if we can encourage you to fall in love with the subject. The purpose of education, leading people out by the hand, ex duco, education, is that we are able to create in you the fire to go on studying your subject for the rest of your careers, the rest of your lives. Now, it's my privilege to sit on a chair fashioned and given to this university by His late Majesty King Henry VIII. And that chair was founded, along with other Regius chairs in this university, in a date that I find very easy to remember. I don't know whether you will, but it's 1540. And as a not very good tennis player, that's usually the score when I'm serving after a few points. And I'm the 24th Regius, and I'm very proud to be the 24th Regius Professor of Physics in this university. If I could have the first slide.
So with all introductions now over, life begins in earnest.
The major worry is that because I'm doing medical sciences and the workload is so very heavy, I've always been worried that I won't manage to fit in all the things you're meant to come here for. Nobody's really been able to help me on that, and I'll just have to see what it's like and take it in my stride. Although I'm told that if I leave it too late, I'll be out of the cliques that you need to join if you want to be a society person.
At the moment, I think the thing I'm most looking forward to is getting involved with a group called the Light Entertainment Society, which I don't even know if I'll get into because you've got to audition for it. But they seem like a bunch of nutters, which is very reassuring.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the smoking concert. Guten Abend, meine Damen und Herren, willkommen im Private Concert. Bonsoir, mesdames et messieurs. Soyez la bienvenue à le concert à fumer.
It's now that students take their first faltering steps down paths that could bring fame and fortune in later life.
Yakida.
College Review, the Footlights, Radio 4, television. It's a track beaten through the jungle already by Peter Cook, Jonathan Miller, John Cleese, and so on.
There's no real art in this show. No real northern art. So I thought I'd give you some, right? A monologue entitled The Lancashire Vampire. Oh, audience participation. Can you handle audience participation? Right. Mongrel howling. Brilliant! Absolutely marvellous. And sounds of sympathy. Oh, absolutely marvellous. I shall leave it to your discretion when to add these.
Helen Busby is a first-year student at Queen's reading philosophy.
Right, the Lancashire Vampire. There's a one-eyed town they call Nelson. Shut up. There's a one-eyed town they call Nelson. Halfway up Corn Valley on the map. And a couple were out there walking. A lass and a pale-looking chap. His ideas of a night out were funny. He suggested a walk upon moors. Shouldn't me go up there? I get grass in me ear. Do you think I'm one of them moors? So they went for a drink at local. He ordered, and she got irate. She said, drink Bloody Mary, do you think I'm a fairy? A pint of draft Guinness here, mate.
I had always thought that among the voting members of a university, I mean, it was the socialist, well, the Labour students generally have the strongest voice. And it's very funny to find that that isn't the case here. And that was almost shocking to begin with.
The Christians have folded their tents and left. The old hall is host now to the Tory Reform Group, the Society for Cambridge Wets.
You realise you'll never get into the House of Commons like this, Nick?
Oh, I know.
You totally ruined your political career until Maggie's gone down the chutes.
It's vaguely political. So we've got, it is actually political.
Is Margaret Thatcher a dirty name in this society?
No, it's we try not to take political viewpoints, actually.
Maybe it's not right for people to be standing around at cocktail parties when they're 20, 21, making small talk. I see people and they're missing out on something that might be quite good, because this is a phase of their life and they're moving straight on to being 45.
Have you asked Margaret Thatcher to come as a speaker?
No, she never comes to Cambridge. It's not
even to the union?
No, because she's an Oxford person.
Surrogate Sebastians, ersatz Aloysiuses and trivial pursuits to all but the college winkers, who award themselves tricolour bow ties for their expertise in winking.
I could,
You
go
could
for it.
centralise some of them, but not yet. Bring that next one. Lucky spot. Bring that one out the way, I think.
I think we ought to take it loose in, otherwise we might have the possibility.
Yes, well, yeah. Yes. Well done, Steve. Hello, Carl. Come in.
After a term at Queen's, Carl Mainprize is feeling distinctly poorly. Dr. Greenis' tutor has monitored his decline.
I've got my illness back. Well then, I went to the nurse this morning and she made an immediate appointment with the doctor. And I saw Dr. Ryans and he said he doesn't exactly know whether it's the same thing or a new one. It could be that my immune system hasn't recovered from the last one yet and I've got another one, or that the other one's just recurred. And he said, I took 20 mils of blood and they sent 10 off for the pulmonal test, the glandular fever, and 10 off to public health to test for viruses.
Right.
Trying to find out what it is.
What a misery, eh?
Yeah.
How's things gone this term, since you came back? Because you were bouncy at the beginning of term.
Yeah, well, I felt all right, and then I just started with a sore throat on Friday, and it just got worse and worse. I haven't eaten anything all day. It's painful to swallow, because I have a cough, and every time I cough as well,
We've got to get you drinking at least. Have you been drinking?
Yeah, I've been drinking occasional sips of water.
Now, come on, potential medic, you're supposed to do better than that. You really must drink in vast quantities if you're not eating it.
Glandular fever is suspected and Carl is sent to the sick bay.
How are you feeling now?
It's not put me off being a doctor, it's just made me realise how naive the medical profession is. Perhaps I'll get chastised for that, but I suppose it's my duty to sort of help the medical profession sort these naiveties out. So perhaps that's the thing for going into research. I don't know whether I'll do that yet.
Research your own illness?
Yes, I have had friends say I can, in my third year, if we do a bit of research my own virus, if it is a virus, and try and find out what it is, and then can name it after myself and become a famous doctor that way or something.
Right. What I'd like to do, I think...
As well as being tutor in charge of the physical, moral and spiritual welfare of undergraduates, Dr. Green is primarily a teacher in a subject for which Cambridge is admired worldwide, mathematics.
Yeah. Can I just go back to... Can I start again at scratch? Now, if I had a semi-infinite string, either tied to something rigid there, or say that one of the problems we did was the ring on the bar, or say tied on with a mass m to another string there, okay? What we did was say someone was shaking the end of that string or prescribing something which was giving a certain input, and the input was prescribed as a travelling wave coming in. All right? And we said it was the real part of and going in the plus direction, so on. I always write my waves, Steve, with an e to the I of t at the beginning, because when we start to apply boundary conditions, and you'll see this in the case of the strings, when we start to apply boundary conditions at x equals 0 here, for this mass here, if you'd written your waves the other way round, it's almost obvious, isn't it?
At Cambridge, these weekly sessions are called supervisions. They're the only compulsory dates in the student's calendar.
Right. It's got to be equal to the difference in the tensions of the string.
Right, what you're writing down is an equation of motion for that mass, right? Which is saying that mass times acceleration, and I don't care whether you have 1 or 2 there.
And Mr. Lawrence is going to have a very exciting child.
Never should have sold the Southern Cross. It should have gone to Dusty.
Well, hold on. I can understand you being upset, but why so angry?
You don't understand. Amy died so we could keep the Southern Cross, not sell it.
Throughout the college now, most students have found their feet. In small groups and large groups, they meet and forge the friendships of a lifetime. Careers and vocations start here.
Does everyone else find that difficult? I personally do anyway.
Comes down a bit to what we were talking about last week again, doesn't it? It's where we're looking at the greatest commandment of Christ, which says, you know.
The Christian Union meets for its weekly Bible study. For generations, future bishops and archbishops like Shepherd and Ramsey have met and prayed in rooms like these.
Priorities right, obviously. And the fact that she saw Jesus as the important thing, her devotion to Jesus. But quite how, and that was more important than the poor. Again, it's I suppose the question of how we do the same thing in giving to Jesus, and so saying, right, we'll give to Jesus, and it's our devotion to Jesus that counts more than our devotion to the poor.
This is quite funny because I told my parents this weekend about becoming a Christian, and they didn't sort of show any very harsh feelings about it. I said, you won't like it too much when I go off the bonga bonga land and start converting the bonga bonga, and so I went.
Steve Bowater is a new member. After he attended the Christian Union, something happened to him on his own Damascus road.
It wasn't until about 6 weeks ago I actually had my own experience of God, which is what I really needed to bring me to him, if you like. It was 2 a.m. one morning. I just finished working, and I just thought I'd leaf through the Bible before I went to bed. So I read a bit from Matthew, which says, if your hand or foot causes you to sin, then cut it off and throw it away, because you really don't need it to get into heaven. So I stubbed my cigarette out, very symbolically, I think. And it says, and if your eye causes you to sin, then poke that out, because you really don't need that either. So I screwed my packet of cigarettes up, threw it in the bin. I thought, this is it. And I prayed to God for the first time, believing that he was listening. And I said, look, God, I've had enough. I want to stop smoking. I know you can help me. And this is where it gets a bit dramatic, but this is the good bit. A tingling ball of nerves developed in my spine, which grew into quite a large ball, and gradually moved up my spine. And as it went up, it lifted. It physically felt like something was being lifted out of my body. It washed through from the bottom upwards. Everything below was clean and pure, if you like. Everything above was horrible and gritty and dirty. It gradually passed through until I felt genuinely kind of clean and pure and joyful, and lots of Christian cliches like that. So I just couldn't deny God had done that for me. I knew deep in my heart that that was God. So I got down on my knees and I prayed and I said, okay, you've helped me, you can do what you will with me. So I committed my life to Jesus Christ up there somewhere. And it's made a lot of differences actually. It didn't stop there. It's not just a case of a one-off encounter with God. It's been really good actually. I've learnt a lot over the past 6 weeks.